Hello my friends! Today you are gonna learn how to use Firebase in a React application. We are gonna start with Firebase Authentication. You will see how to log in and register, how to protect your routes against unauthenticated users, and then we are gonna fetch collections from Firebase DB. We'll add items using inputs, and also we'll be able to upload images to Firebase Storage. Then you will learn how to delete and update items and how to listen Firebase collections to create real-time applications. And finally, we are gonna fetch data using advanced queries. I believe that it's an awesome crash course for beginners who want to learn Firebase. And for this project, we are gonna use our latest admin dashboard design. If you didn't watch that video, it's still okay, but I highly recommend you to watch it first. It's gonna be much easier to follow. Okay, I hope you will like it. If you are ready, let's get started. Okay, I created new folder here. As you can see, it's empty. What I'm gonna do is creating my React admin dashboard. To do that, we are gonna use our previous project. I recommend you to watch that video, but if you didn't, don't worry, it's gonna be just basics of Firebase. You are gonna learn how to log in, register, create new items, and how to delete them, how to get them. So you can directly download this project. To do that, I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna copy this URL. And if you realize, it's a branch. So we are not gonna directly clone this repository. We are gonna install only this branch. To do that, I will come here and I will say git clone and my branch name, which is React admin, and my URL. And I don't want to create any file. I'm just gonna install everything here. So I will say dot and enter. And as you can see, they are here, but we don't have our libraries. We have to install them. If you are using Yarn, you can just write here Yarn. If you are using npm, you can write npm install, and it's gonna install all libraries. Okay, they are here. Right now we can start our application. I will say yarn start or npm start. And it's here. Perfect. So let's create our Firebase project. I will come here and I will say go to console. And I'm gonna create new project. Let's give a name, just tutorial. I will continue. I don't need any analytics here. Let's create our project. It's gonna take a while and okay, it's ready. Let's continue. So what I'm gonna do is creating my application. You can create any mobile application or you can create web application. Of course, we are gonna create a website. So I'm gonna choose this one. Let's give name. It's gonna be again tutorial or whatever you say. We don't need any hosting. Okay, it says we have to install Firebase first. And after that, we are gonna use our credentials here. Let's create. I will copy this. Let's open new terminal and I will say yarn add Firebase. Okay, let's copy here and initialize our application. I will copy and I will come here inside source and create new file. And it's gonna be firebase.js. I'm gonna paste them. I can just delete those comments. And of course, this is a secret key. You shouldn't store this in any JS file. We have to hide it. To do that, we are gonna use env file. I will say .env, and let's take this API key, copy, and I will say React app Firebase key. And I'm gonna paste here. If you want to, you can hide your domain, project ID, whatever you want. But I just want to show you how you can do this. Basically, I will just copy this name and paste here. Of course, we are gonna use process.env and our variable name. Okay, Why we are using env? That because when we upload our application into GitHub, we are not gonna upload this file and no one will be able to see our API key. Okay, let's get started. I will say authentication. We are gonna create new user and we are gonna try to log in. I will say get started. As you can see, there are many options here. We can log in using email, phone number, or any additional services here. But in this project, we are gonna create new users using email and password. So I'm gonna choose this and I will say enable. Let's save. Okay, it's ready. If I click here, let me make this bigger. Okay. What I'm gonna do is adding new user here. Of course, we are gonna register later, but for now, to log in our application, I'm gonna create one. Let's say admin Lama.dev. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I will say add user. And as you can see, it's ready. And this is our user ID. And as you realize, we are not able to give our other details like username, display name, address, or any other things. Only thing we can do here is giving our email and password. But don't worry, we are gonna use Firestore here and create all our details. Remember, it's only for authentication. Okay, let's try to log in. I will go to login page. But as I remember, I forgot creating any form here. Let's create. We have login page here, but we don't have any input. Okay, let's say class name is gonna be login, and inside this container I'm gonna create a form and it's gonna include, let's delete this action. It's gonna include 2 inputs. Let's say input type will be text and let's give placeholder and it's gonna be email. By the way, type can be email also. And I'm gonna create one more and it's gonna be type password and placeholder password. And of course we are gonna have a button and it's gonna be login. And I will come here and say type will be submit. I'm gonna save and let's see. Okay, they are here, but I can move them here and I can make them vertical. Let's come here inside login CSS and I'm gonna say height 100 VH is gonna be full height and I'm gonna center everything. I'll say display flex, align item center and justify content center. As you can see, they are centered both horizontally and vertically, but let's do the same thing for our form. I will come here and say form, display flex again, but this time flex direction will be column, like that. Inside my form, firstly let's give some width and height, and I'm gonna give some margin between them, like that. What about this button? I will come here, I will say button, and again let's say 200, height 30, and I don't wanna any border, I will say border none, like that. By the way, I can center them. Where is our form? As you can see, display flex, but we didn't say align item center. Okay, it's much better. And let's change this color maybe. I will say background color, maybe purple or whatever you say. And text color will be white, like that. Maybe font weight, it can be bold. I will say font weight bold. And finally, cursor pointer. Okay, it's ready. Maybe I can create here some error message. I will say span, wrong, email, or password. Like that. Let's take care of this. Underneath this button, I will say span. It's gonna be font size 12 and color will be red. It's gonna be like a warning, maybe margin top. Okay, perfect. Of course, we are not gonna show this right now. Let's hide it. To do that, I'm gonna use state here and I will say const error, set error, and it's gonna be use state hook, and at the beginning it's gonna be false. We are not gonna see any error. Let's write here our condition. I will say if there is an error, just show this span. In this case it's false, so we are not gonna see it. As you can see, if it's true, it's gonna appear. Perfect. So what I'm gonna do is creating here onSubmit method, and I'm gonna call a function. I will say handle login. Let's create this. Const handle login is gonna take event, and we are gonna try to login using our Firebase. Of course, you can come here and say onClick method for this button, but it's exactly the same thing. That because we are using type submit, when we click this button, it's gonna fire this function. Firstly, what I'm gonna do is writing here prevent default. Let me show you first. I'm gonna click this button, and as you can see, it's refreshing our page. To prevent this, I'm gonna write here event prevent default, like that. Let's click again, and as you can see, it's not refreshing anymore. Okay, let's try to log in. I will come here and I'm gonna go to docs. Let's write here maybe authentication. Okay, learn how to get started. By the way, I really don't like Firebase documentation. I don't know, it's just weird. You cannot find what you want easily. Okay, we are gonna use email address and password, and it's gonna be web application. Okay, as you can see, we are gonna need some methods. We are gonna use Firebase AUTH. I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna open my Firebase, and let's import them. Actually, we can use this here, because we are gonna log in here. But what we can do is exporting this get auth. I will come here and I will say const auth, and it's gonna be get auth method. Of course, I'm gonna export this that we can use in the login page. I will say export, and we can use it right now. Let's come here and say import auth from our Firebase file here, and let's go to doc again, and let's see what we have. As you can see, we have a function here. It's gonna take 3 parameters. First one will be our authentication method, which we exported, our email and password. And it's a promise. As you can see, it returns our user credentials, or if there's an error, it's gonna return an error. Let's copy this, and I'm gonna paste it here. Our method here, but we don't have any email or password. Let's create here 2 more use states. It's gonna be email, set email, and at the beginning it's gonna be an empty string, and password also, like that. So how we are gonna change those states? It's really easy. I will just use onChange method, and whenever we change our email, it's gonna set new email, and it's gonna be event target and value. So what's event target and value? Basically, whatever we write inside this input, it's gonna take this text and it's gonna set new email. In this case, our email will be this text here. So I can do the same thing for password. Let's copy here. I'm gonna paste, and in this case, it's gonna be set password, event target and value. Okay, right now we have email and password. We can directly pass them here, and if everything is okay, it's gonna return our user, and let's see what's inside this user. I will say console log and user. And if there's an error, we can set our error and we can show our span here. Let's say set error, and it's gonna be true. Let's write here a wrong credential first. I'm gonna log in. Oops, it should be email, that because we said type is email. Let's write test.com, some password here. I'm gonna log in. What? Actually logged in. Oh, instead of login, we just created new user. Let's come back. I'm so sorry, guys. It's gonna be sign in new user. As you can see, it's here. But actually it was good, that because you learned how to register. I'm gonna refresh here. And as you can see, our account is here. Okay. Anyway, it's exactly the same thing. We are just gonna change this method. Let's come here and change this. Create user. And it's gonna be sign in with email and password. And again, we are gonna pass our parameters and it's gonna return us our credentials. Nothing has changed. Let's try again. I'm gonna write here wrong credentials. I'm gonna try to log in. And as you can see, wrong email or password. And we are getting 400 status code here. But if I change it and try to log in, as you can see, it gives our user here all those properties. But as you realize, after this process, it still stays in this login page. So what I'm gonna do is using React Router DOM and navigate our URL. To do that, I'm gonna use navigate hook. So I will say const navigate is gonna be use navigate, and I can redirect our users to another page. After successful login, I can delete here. I will say navigate and wherever we want. Let's say home page. I'm gonna try again. Admin Lama.dev. I'm gonna log in, and as you can see, we are in the home page. Perfect. Of course, it warns us that because our password is too weak, but anyway, it's just a test. Okay, I'm gonna close here, but we have a problem. That because if I go to login page again, as you can see, we are not logged in, and also we can see any pages here. Even if we didn't log in, we can go to user page, product page, we can see everything. Let's open our application, and as you can see, there is no protection. We can see every path here. So what I'm gonna do, firstly, let's create here a user. Let's say current user, and it's gonna be false. Of course, it's just a temporary variable. After login process, we are gonna update our user, but I'm just gonna show you how to protect your roots. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna create new function, require auth, and here we are gonna pass our components. So basically I can just say children. You are gonna understand better, don't worry. And I'm gonna write here a condition. I will say return if there is a current user, just go to children, and if there is no user, just navigate to login page. To do that, we can use navigate component from React Router DOM. Of course, it's a component. As you can see, it's here, and I'm gonna navigate to login page. Of course, /login. Of course, I forgot here my arrow. Okay, what we have done here. If we go to home page, we are gonna pass this component into this function. It's gonna be our children in this case, and it's gonna check if there is a current user, just go to children, which is home page. If there is no current user, just go to login page. That's because we are not allowed to see this page. So how we are gonna use them? Let's come here. I'm gonna move this login page here because others will be required auth, and I'm just gonna wrap my home component like that. Okay, I'm gonna save and let's try. As you remember, we don't have any user. It means we are gonna go to login page. I'm gonna come here and delete this path here. I'm gonna try to go to home page, and as you can see, we are going to login page. Let's try again. Okay, perfect. So we can do the same thing for other routes here. Okay, I created my other pages like that. As you can see, they are required. It means if I try to go to users, for example, I'm not allowed. We are going to login page. And if I make this true, we will be able to see our pages like that. Perfect. But how we are gonna use our user here? Of course, inside app.js, you can create here new use state. You can say user and set user, and you can pass set user prop here. And after the login process, you can set that user. But it's not a good idea that because we should be able to reach that user everywhere. For example, here, or in our sidebar, or in any other components. So what I'm gonna do is creating a context API. Remember, for this project, we have created dark mode context, and I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. I'm gonna create authentication context, and after the login process, we are gonna update our user, and we will be able to reach this everywhere. So let's open our sidebar here, and where is our context? I'm gonna close here, and it's here. Okay, as you can see, dark mode context, dark mode reducer, and let's create authentication context and reducer. And let's remember what we have done. Remember, firstly, we are creating our initial state, which includes our main variable here. In this case, it was dark mode. We are able to change this to true or false. And we are going to create our context. We are going to have state and dispatch. We are going to use our reducer, and we will be able to dispatch our actions. Let's see what we had here. As you can see, we had 3 actions here: light mode, dark mode, or toggle. Basically, when we dispatch this action, our dark mode is going to be false. When we dispatch this action, dark mode will be true. And there's a toggle. When we dispatch this, basically it's going to return the opposite of dark mode. And we are using this toggle here. When we click this button, as you can see, it's toggling like that. So I'm going to copy here and paste inside my auth reducer. Of course, I'm going to change this name. It's going to be auth reducer like that. And we are going to have 2 actions. Basically, it's going to be login and logout. And our main variable will be current user. And when we login, remember, it returns us our user here. We are just going to assign this user to our current user. So I can pass this as a action payload. So what about here? If we log out, basically it's going to be null. That's all. It's that easy. So I'm going to close here, and I'm going to create my context. Again, I'm going to copy everything. I don't want to waste time. It's going to be much more easier. Firstly, I'm going to call my reducer. It's going to be auth reducer, and initial state will be current user. At the beginning, it's going to be null. We don't have any user yet. And I'm going to create my context. Let's choose everything here. Not this one, and here. And I'm going to say auth context. Okay, so which values we are going to use? We are going to use our current user and our dispatch, that we can dispatch our reducer actions. And that's all. Of course, we should wrap our application with this provider. To do that, remember what we are doing. I'm going to go to index.js, and as you can see, we wrap our application with dark mode provider, but one more wrapper is going to be auth context provider. I'm going to import, and I'm going to wrap my application like that. It's that easy. So in this case, anywhere in our application, in any page, in any component, we are able to reach our current user. Oops, it's going to be current user, and we will be able to reach our dispatch, that we can log in or log out. Okay, let's close everything here and I'm gonna open login page again. So what I'm gonna do is calling my dispatch method here. To do that, we are gonna use context hook and we are gonna destructure our dispatch. I will say const, let's say first use context. As you can see, it comes from React, and which context I'm gonna use is gonna be our auth context. Let's import this. It's not coming. Auth context from context and auth context. Okay, what I'm gonna destructure here, we have current user and we have dispatch. Here we are gonna use just dispatch. That's because we are just gonna log in. We are gonna need this. I'm gonna copy here and I will say dispatch, and let's open our reducer first and let's see. As you can see, we have action type, and for login we are gonna need action payload. Let's write them. I will say type will be login, and we are gonna have payload, and it's gonna be just this user which comes from our Firebase, and that's all. In this case, I can do the same thing for our application, but this time we can reach our current user. Let's open our app.js, and here I will say use context. I'm gonna import this like that, but this time it's gonna be current user. We don't need that anymore. I'm gonna delete like that. Let's come here and say console log current user, and I'm gonna open my console. As you can see, it's null right now. I'm gonna try to log in. I will say admin Lama.dev. I will log in, and as you can see, we have our user. But there's a problem here, that because if I refresh my page, as you can see, our user is null again. That because at the beginning in our context, our current user is null. It means whenever we refresh our application, it's gonna be null again. To prevent this, after login, we can just take our user. Let me make this bigger. We are gonna store our user inside our local storage. It's gonna be user and user information. If we do that, even if we refresh our page, the user will be always here and we won't need to log in again and again. So I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna use effect. And I'm gonna say whenever our current user changes, what I have done here. Okay, whenever we change our current user, we are gonna assign our details into local storage. To do that, I'm gonna say local storage and set item, and we are gonna set our user. Its name is user and it's gonna be state.current user. But remember, it returns us an object, but we cannot write here directly an object. It has to be string. We cannot store any object here. So basically, I can take this and I can use JSON stringify. And what about here? As I said, when we refresh our page, it's not gonna be null anymore. It's gonna read current user from our local storage. And this time we have to transform this to an object. To do this, I will say JSON and parse and local storage. This time it's gonna be get item, and we are gonna take our user. And if there is no user, it's gonna be just null. As you can see, our user is null. I will try to log in. I'm gonna log in and our user has changed. It's here. Perfect. And even if I refresh my page, we are still here. We are not going to login page. That's because we still have user here. Perfect. So basically we can sign in like that and we can store our user into local storage like that. It's that easy. So if you understood how to log in, let's take care of our lists here. We are gonna fetch all data from Firebase, but we don't have yet. It's just a dummy data. Let's come here and open up our sidebar. Where was this? It was here, I think. Okay, as you can see, this is our data, but we are not gonna use this anymore. We are gonna fetch everything from our DB. But before, let's see how we can add new item. I'm gonna click here and we are gonna use those inputs, and inside Firestore, we are gonna create our new user. So let's create our DB. I'm gonna click here and we can start with production mode or test mode. Let's go with production mode and you are gonna choose any location here. I'm gonna choose USA, doesn't matter. And it's ready. We can create any collection. It's gonna be users, products, or whatever you want. And inside those collections, we are gonna create our documents. But firstly, I'm gonna go to rules. That because we are not allowed to read or write any documents or collections by default, I'm gonna just make this true and I'm gonna publish. Of course, in the future, when we create bigger projects, we are gonna change here, we are gonna write our own rules, but for now, it's gonna be just true. Okay, let's come here and let's see how we can create new documents. I will write here, add document. Okay, maybe here, add new document. Okay, this one I think. Okay, let's see what we have here. As you can see, we have some methods here and we can create our own documents, but what we are gonna need is our database first. We have to create our Firestore DB. Let's do that first. I'm gonna close everything again and I'm gonna go to Firebase and let's initialize our Firestore. Let's go to get started again and let's see how we can do that. And as you can see, we have already initialized our application, but we don't have any DB. We are gonna import this module. Let's come here and write it here. And I'm gonna copy this and paste here. And of course, it's gonna be export again. That's because we are gonna use it in any other components. And let's try. I'm gonna go to new page and I'm gonna try to add new document. Let's come back and I'm gonna import document and set document methods here. And when we click this send button, we are gonna create our document. Let's say on click method, or again, we can write type submit and we can use on submit method here. I will say on submit. And let's say handle add. I'm gonna copy this and create my function here. Const handle add is gonna be again event, that because it's gonna be prevent default again. Prevent default. Okay. Of course, we are gonna use those inputs, but for now, I'm just gonna show you how you can do this. I'm gonna copy this and paste it here. And as you can see, it's a promise. That means it's an async function. And we are going to import our DB here. Remember, it comes from Firebase. By the way, it's going to be just JavaScript async. I'm going to delete here. So when I click that button, it's going to create new collection, which is this. And inside this collection, we are going to create new document, which has name, state, and country. So what about this? It's gonna be our document ID. Let's try and you are gonna understand better. I'm gonna come here, open my console. Of course, this is our user. I forgot deleting this. Don't worry about that. I'm gonna send. Nothing has changed, that because we didn't write anything after creating our documents, but let's see. And as you can see, we have this here. We have new document and this is its ID and all those properties. Perfect, it works. So what about if we don't want to add any custom ID? It's gonna create randomly. Just delete here In this case, we are not going to use set document anymore. It's going to be add document. And here we are not going to choose any document. Instead, we are going to choose our collection. I know it's weird, but this is how it works. Let's check on the documentation. Here, as you can see, when you use set method, you must specify an ID. But if you don't want, you can do this by calling add. As you can see, add document, but this time we are using collection, our collection name, and its properties. This time, let's see actually what it returns. Let's say const response, and it's gonna be console log response. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna send again. I will click, and as you can see, it returns this object here. And as you can see, our properties are not here, but we can see its ID. Let's try. I will say response ID. I will send again, and as you can see, this is our new ID. Let's try. I will refresh, and as you can see, it's here. It's the previous one, and this is what we added first. And also we can add here a timestamp. Let's say timestamp, and it's gonna be server timestamp, like that. As you can see, it comes from Firestore, and there's a comma here, and let's see. I'm gonna click again, our ID. Let's see here. Which one is the new one? This is, I think. Okay, as you can see, this is our timestamp. Perfect. So creating new document is that easy. Of course, you can write here try catch block. If there's an error, you can see that. I'm gonna move this try block here, and I will say catch. If there's an error, just console log. Or you can create new use state here and show your error. And let's delete this. But of course, this is T's collection, but we are gonna need users collection. Let's delete this. I will say T's. I'm gonna delete, and I'm gonna create users. If you remember, for the login and register process, we have to use authentication. We have to create here our users. If we only create here, they are not gonna be able to authenticate. So what I'm gonna do is creating user here. And after, if it's successful, we are gonna create the same user here with same ID, and we are gonna use those properties. But we have a lot of input here, so I'm not gonna create them one by one. What I'm gonna do is creating one use state and storing all those inputs inside this data. Let's say data, set data is gonna be use state. And at the beginning, it's going to be an empty object. Let's see what we have done actually here. If you remember, we have inputs here, and we are mapping through these inputs. And for each input inside this array, we are calling our form input div here. So where those inputs come from, as you remember, we have a form source here, and we have user inputs, and we have product inputs. So what I'm gonna do is changing their IDs. For username, it's gonna be username. Why I'm doing this? That because we are using only one data here, and we are gonna write onChange method for this input. For example, for username, we are gonna use this ID. For name and surname, let's write here display name, and email, phone number, password, address, and country. And we are gonna use all those IDs inside our Firestore DB. So make sure that you are not giving any space or something here. So let's come here and let's write our onChange method. I will say onChange, and it's gonna call, let's say, handle input function. Let's create this. I will come here and say const handle input is gonna be event, and we are gonna change our data here. Of course, const. So we can reach their IDs. Let's say const ID is going to be event target.id, which we have created. And also we can reach their value. Const value is going to be event target and value. In this case, I can set my data again, and it's going to be the previous data. I'm going to spread this, and also we are going to add new one. It's going to be ID equals value, like that. You are going to understand better right now. Let's see actually console log and data. Of course, we didn't give our IDs. Let's give those form inputs. It's here. As you can see, I'll say ID is going to be input.id. Let's see. I'm going to come here and write something. And as you can see, display name is changing. If I write something here, as you can see, display name is still here. That's because we spread our previous data here. It's not changing. We are just adding one more value here. ID and value. Username and value. Like that. Perfect. So we have our properties. So let's add it to the DB. But as I said, we have to create new user also. So we are gonna use sign up with email and password method. Let's remember again. We are gonna use add document and also sign up with, create user with email and password. Let's do that. I'm gonna copy this and paste it here. Okay, we don't need that. That's because we are gonna fetch this from our Firebase file. I will say auth. Okay, firstly we are gonna create using these methods. After that we are gonna set new document and we are gonna create user in our DB. Let's do that. I will say const response is gonna be await create user, and I'm gonna pass here auth data.email and data.password, like that. And if you remember, it returns us a user which includes an ID, and we can use that ID and we can set our users in the DB. To do that, of course, we are going to use set document. That because we are not going to generate any ID, we already have, and it's going to be document users collection and response user and ID. Sorry, it's going to be UID. Okay, so what we are going to pass here? We are going to have timestamp and we are going to have all those input properties. So I will say data, and that's all. Let's see. Let's try. I hope everything is okay. I'm gonna come here and let's refresh and close here. I will say Jane Doe. Test and USA. I'm gonna send, and if everything is okay, we are gonna see it here. Let's refresh, and perfect, it's here. And remember this document ID, we are gonna check authentication, and it's gonna be the same ID. And it's here, 0pp, 0pp, perfect. Why we are using same ID? That because if you want to delete this user, we are gonna delete this from Firestore database, and at the same time, we are gonna delete this from authentication users. And there is one more thing here, and it's gonna be our image. Right now, we are not able to upload any image, but we are gonna use Firebase Storage, and we are gonna be able to upload any file here. I'm gonna come to rules, and again, we are not allowed right now. I will say true, and let's try to upload. To do that, I'm gonna go to doc again, and I will write here Firestore storage. I can directly write those codes here, but I want to show you how to read documents. That because if it changes, if they change the version or something, you can just follow these steps and you can see how you can implement the new version. let's say storage for web, and as you can see, we are gonna need this get storage method. I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna go to Firebase, and we are gonna initialize our storage and we are gonna export it. Of course, it's gonna be our app, and I will say export storage. Okay, right now we can use it. Let's see how we can do it. I'm gonna come here, and as you can see, upload files. As you can see, it shows one by one, but we are gonna need advanced one. Okay, this one. As you can see, we are gonna need some methods here. We are gonna create our storage ref. We are gonna pass our storage here, which we have created. And after that, we are gonna give any image name. You can give whatever you want. And finally, we are gonna upload our image. Let's copy here. And I'm gonna go to new page and paste here. We don't need get storage, we already have. It's here. I'm gonna just import this like that. And we can start uploading our files. As you remember, we have file use state here, and whenever we change our images, we are applying on change method and setting our file. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is creating here a use effect. That because when we choose any image here, we are gonna immediately start uploading that image to our store, and we are gonna get its link. And when I click this button, we are gonna send them to user DB here. And additionally, we are gonna add that image URL here. Let's do that. I will say, let's delete here. Actually, let's write it underneath our use states. I will say use effect. And our dependency will be file. And if there is a file, we are gonna upload our image. Let's say const upload file. We are gonna write our functions here, and finally, if there is a file, we are gonna call this function like that. Okay, let's go back to doc here, and firstly, we are gonna need a reference, storage reference, and as I said, we can give any image name. To do that, we can directly use file.name. But if we do that, if we upload multiple files with the same name, it's gonna overwrite. To prevent this, we should create a unique name. I will say const name or unique name. It's gonna be new date. I'm just gonna take the timestamp. Let's say get time. And also I'm gonna add here file.name. Basically, if file name is test.png, it's gonna create a new timestamp according to your uploading time, and also it's gonna use that name. Actually, let me show you, you can understand better. I will say name. I'm gonna comment this out. So I'm gonna come here and choose an image. Let's choose this one, and I'm gonna open my console, and it's here. As you can see, this is our timestamp, and this is the actual name, 1.jpg. Those are coming from console log data. As you remember, don't worry about that. So let's upload this. Let's check here, and we are gonna complete our uploading task. Let's copy here like that. Let's open this again, and I'm gonna paste the other code. There is a warning here that because we don't have any default case, I will say default is gonna be just, let's say, break. Okay, let's see what we have here. We have a reference, and we are gonna upload our file using this reference and our actual file, and after that it's gonna start uploading. And here we have some stages. Let's delete those comments actually. Okay, and as you can see, we are actually listening our uploading process here, and whenever our state changes, it's gonna inform us. As you can see, there's a progress variable here, and we can see uploading percentage, or whenever it pauses, it's gonna warn us. Or if there's an error, we can write here any handling. For now, let's say console log error. And finally, if everything is okay, if there is no error, it's gonna give us a downloadable URL. And we are gonna take this URL and set our data again. I know it's confusing, but don't worry about that. You are gonna understand better right now. I'm gonna delete this. We are not gonna console log anything. I'm gonna just set my data. Remember, when we write anything in our inputs, our data will be updated. And also when we upload any image, it's gonna take the URL and update our data again. To do that, again, you can say previous data and URL. But if you do that, as you can see, there's a warning here that because in this case, the data is our dependency. To prevent this, you can basically use the function method. What I mean by that, you can write here previous or whatever you want. And I will say take the previous data. It's exactly the same thing. We are just not using data variable here. And I will say image. It's gonna be download URL. Like that. I'm gonna save. And you are gonna understand this progress better if I open my console. Let's open. I'm gonna refresh the page. Why it's still here? Let's open our app.js. We forgot this console log, as you can see. I will delete. Okay, I'm gonna refresh again. Okay, perfect. So what I'm gonna do is giving a username, for example, test, and I'm gonna try to upload an image. I'm gonna upload this one to .jpg. And as you can see, upload is 0%, still running, and right now it's 100%, and it means it's in our storage right now. This is how we see all those progress here. Let's check our storage. I'm gonna come here, and as you can see, image is here. Perfect. And if we check our data, let's write it here again. And as you can see, username is test and image is our image URL. Of course, it uploaded again, that because we save our file here. So what we can do here, we can disable our button during uploading process, that because when we click any image and when we suddenly click this send button, it's not gonna add this URL to our data. It's gonna upload, but we are not gonna see it in our user collection. To prevent this, let's create here a use state again, and it's gonna be percentage set percentage. At the beginning it's gonna be null, and whenever we change our percentage here, this progress, we are gonna set our percentage. Let's come here and say set percentage. It's gonna be progress. And how I'm gonna disable my button? It's really easy. We are gonna use disabled attribute, and here I'm gonna write my condition. I will say if progress, what was the name? Percentage doesn't equal null, and if it's smaller than 100, we are gonna disable that. At the beginning, remember, it was null. That means we didn't start any uploading process. And also if it's smaller than 100, which means the uploading process is still in progress. If it's still in progress, we are gonna disable it. Let's open our CSS file actually, and we can give some style for this button. I will come here and I will say if it's disabled, make this background color. What was the color? It was teal, and I'm just gonna reduce this opacity a little bit, maybe darker color. It really doesn't matter. And also I will say cursor not allowed. Let's see. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna upload this image, and as you can see, it's disabled. Even if I click here, it's not gonna send anything. Okay, right now we have an image. Let's quickly test it. Test with image. Actually, I'm gonna copy this here. I'm gonna send. Let's check. I'm gonna refresh here. Okay, our image is here. And if I check Firestore, and this one I think, and as you can see, it's here. Perfect. And if I go to Authentication, you are gonna see that our user is here. Perfect. And it's exactly the same UID. So what about fetching file? I'm gonna come here, and for users, for example, As you can see, we are using dummy data, but this time we are gonna fetch our all users here. Of course, we have 2 of them, but we are gonna create more. But before, let's see how we can fetch all data. Get data. Let's click here, get a document. As you can see, you can fetch just one document, but we are gonna fetch all of them, multiple documents, and get all documents in a collection. We are gonna need that. And as you can see, again, we are gonna use collection, and also we are gonna use this method, and we are gonna fetch all data in the collection. Let's do that. I'm gonna come here and copy. And let's close everything and open up our list. And as you can see, there's a data table here. We can also fetch our data in that component. It doesn't matter actually. Let's fetch it here. And as you can see, this is our dummy data. I'm gonna delete this. Instead, it's gonna be an empty array at the beginning. And then we are gonna fetch our data. Let's create here use effect. And it's going to be an empty array here. That's because this use effect will be fired when we call data table component, and it's going to run only once. And I will say const fetch data. Of course, it's going to be async function. That's because we are fetching data. What's here? Okay. Let's import our functions like that. And we are going to use this query like that. Of course, we should import our DB. Remember, it's in our Firebase file. Let's import it here. DB from Firebase. Okay. Of course, our collection name will be users. And as you can see, it's not working like MongoDB. It doesn't return us directly all those users. Instead, we should use here a loop. And for each document, we should set our data. But before, let's write here try catch block. If there is any error, I'm gonna write it here, catch error, and just console log. Okay, and what I'm gonna do, instead of setting my data again and again, I can basically create here an empty list, and I can push each document here, list.push, and each document. Let's delete this console log, by the way. And after that, after ending all those process, I can set my data, and it's gonna be list. And of course, I'm gonna call my async function here, and let's see what we have. I will say console log and data. Okay, they are already here, and as you can see, there is something wrong here. Instead of giving us our user properties, it returns this strange object here. But if you check its methods, you are gonna see that there's a data method here, and it's gonna include all properties. As I said, Firebase is a little bit strange, but this is how it works. So instead of document, if I say document.data, let's check right now. And right now there is another error, that because we don't have any ID inside this data. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna comment off this set data, and I'm gonna console log this list. And right now, as you can see, all those properties here. And you can understand why we saw that error, that because we don't have any ID here. It doesn't return document ID. If I write here document.id, you are gonna see that it includes our IDs. So I can use both this ID and this data. Let's do that. I'm gonna close here like that with curly brackets, and I'm gonna say ID equals doc.id, and also every property inside this data like that. Right now I'm gonna save, and this time, as you can see, we have ID and all those properties. Perfect. So I can set my data again. I'm gonna open this, and they are here. Awesome. Let's close this console. As you can see, there is age and status here, but we don't have in our DB. But don't worry, you can change your users here, or you can change your columns here. Instead of age, you can say, I don't know, maybe country. For status, you can say address, because remember, we are using our columns here, data table source, and it was our rows. As you can see, temporary data. Right now we can delete this. And we have user columns here. As you can see, it's image and username, age. If I say, for example, address, it's gonna show this address, and you can show anything else here. It depends on you. Just play around this data table or your documents here. I'm just showing you how you can fetch data, create data, delete data. Those are not important for now. And as you can see, we don't have any image. That's why it's broken. So let me show you how you can delete this user. Let's come here. You already know what we are gonna do. I will say delete data. And as you can see, it's really easy. Again, document our DB, and we are gonna use this method. That's all. And we are gonna indicate here our item ID, document ID. It's that easy. Let's copy this. Actually, we already have Firestore library here. We are just gonna need this one. Let's come here, delete doc, and also document here. And we are gonna delete our item. And if you remember from previous tutorial, we have a handle delete function here. It takes item ID and it just filter our data. It doesn't actually deleting anything from DB because we didn't have. But right now we are gonna delete this item. Let me show you. If I click here, as you can see, it's filtering, but it's still here. If I refresh the page, as you can see, and right now we are just gonna delete from our DB. Let's copy this, and I'm gonna come here, try catch block, error, if there's an error, console log. And what we are gonna try, we are gonna try deleting our document. Of course, it's gonna be async. And after deleting, we can filter our item, and it's gonna be users. And I'm gonna write here my document ID. Let's see right now. I'm gonna delete. Okay, it's not here anymore. Let's check. And perfect. We deleted. If we check here in our DB, there is only one. Perfect. So what I'm gonna do is adding here some other users, and after that we are gonna test something else. I'm gonna stop the video and I'll see you then. Okay, I added some other users, but I realized something here. When we create any user and when we click on this button, actually we are not navigated any other pages. To prevent this, let's open up new page, and after sending our document, we can navigate the previous page. How we can do this? To do that, I'm gonna use navigate hook. I will say const navigate. Use navigate comes from React Router DOM, and after adding our document, I will say navigate and -1. Just go back to previous page. Let's try. I will write here something, doesn't matter. And username, and let's give image. Okay, it's uploading, it's done. I will click. Okay, password should be at least 6 characters. I will send again, and as you can see, it returns me to users page. And as you can see, there are some users here. So what I'm gonna show you is using real-time database. What I mean by that, for example, this Emma. As you can see, there is no image. I wanna delete this. Let's find out. Okay, it's here. I'm gonna delete it. Okay, it's deleted. But as you can see, we are fetching data only once. So even if I delete this user inside my DB, it's still here. But if I refresh the page, it's not gonna be here. It's not a big deal, but I just want to show you how you can do this. As you remember, we are using getDocuments function to fetch our data just once, but also there is one more solution, and it's listening for real-time updates. Let's click, and here its method is onSnapshot. Basically, we are listening our documents or collections or whatever, and whenever it changes, we can directly see the result. What I mean by that? Let's call this function inside data table, and I'm gonna just paste here, and after that we are gonna call this function. I'm just gonna comment off this data fetching. We don't need this anymore. Instead, I will say listen, which means real time. What I'm gonna do is pasting my function, but of course it's not gonna be document. We are gonna listen our collection. DB, it's gonna be users. We are not gonna need any specific ID because it's whole collection. And after that, it's gonna return us a snapshot. And again, I can create my list. Let list empty array, and for each document of this snapshot, let's say for each documents, I'm gonna take each one and I'm gonna add inside my list. List.push. Remember what we are doing. Firstly, we are taking its ID, in this case document.id, and also every properties, which is document.data, like that. And finally, I'm gonna set my data, and it's gonna be list. And also I can return here any error. If there's an error, it's gonna be just console log, like that. As you can see, it works like how we can handle our file uploading here. It's actually listening our uploading process, and it just informs us for every process here. And also we can return any error. Basically, when you listen anything, you are gonna use this structure. And also we are using a variable here, that because when we start mounting our component here, we have to unsubscribe again and again. Otherwise, it's gonna listen this forever and it's gonna cause some memory leak. To prevent this, I'm just gonna return a cleanup function, and it's gonna be unsubscribe. Okay, I hope everything is okay. Let's see. I'm gonna refresh my page. As you can see, they are still here. I'm gonna come here and let's delete one of them. For example, Jane Doe. Okay, it's the first one. I'm gonna delete this. And it's gone. We didn't have to delete, we didn't have to refresh. It's immediately changing our user's result. It's that easy. By the way guys, I want to create a tutorial about all React hooks so you can understand use effect better, how to use cleanup functions, and also we are gonna cover how to use useRef, use callback function, use memo. Just keep your notifications open and it's gonna be coming soon. Okay, I hope you understand how to return all collection. You can fetch only once, or you can listen your collections, your documents. Let's delete here, by the way. Okay, by the way guys, as you realize, for users we are using user data table. If we go to products, we are still using users. To prevent this, what you can do, if you remember, we are able to use some props here. For example, for products, as you can see, there is a title here. We can use it here. And also we can pass here which data table source we are going to use. As you can see, we have only users columns here. But also you can create product columns, which includes product title, its price, I don't know, other features. And after that, you can pass it as a prop. And you can fetch data according to your list page. For example, here, as you can see, we are fetching users collection, but basically you can take here, for example, type prop, and you can pass it here. That's all. I'm not gonna show everything, that because it's not a complete project. I'm just showing you how to use Firebase. And for the upload process, it's gonna be exactly the same, just right here. Probably you don't even need me anymore. you know what you are gonna do. Update. And as you can see, set documents again. Remember, as we did before, we are setting new document. We are giving our collection name and its specific ID, and we are changing its properties. That's all. I'm not showing that because I've already shown this. Remember, if you want to add any document, you are using add doc, and here is gonna be collection, and you don't have to specify any ID. But if you are updating any document or you are adding new document with a specific ID, you are basically using set document. And that's all, I think. But I want to show you some specific things. For example, how you can fetch data using queries. Maybe we can fetch some widgets here, maybe this chart. And after that, we can end our tutorial. Let's take care of them. Okay, I'm gonna close everything here and I'm gonna open widgets. That's showing this like that. And as you remember, we are using different kind of widgets and we are separating them using switch case. Of course, if you want to, if it looks strange for you, actually for me too, you can create source folder here as we did for our data table. You can create different components here and you can give title, its link title, its icon, and in the home page you can just pass that component according to this type. It really doesn't matter. It was just a beginner tutorial, so it's not a big deal. Don't worry about that. Of course, if you are creating something complex, 6 or 7 components are not enough here, but for beginners it's totally okay. So what I'm gonna do, as you can see, we are gonna have a counter here. For example, for the user, we are gonna get the user number, but it's gonna be only for this month, last 30 days. And here there is a percentage. What we are gonna do is fetching user number for this month, also the last month, and we should compare them and write here the percentage. How we are gonna do this? Let's create use effect here and we are gonna fetch our data. I will say use effect, and as always, const fetch data. It's gonna be async. And finally, we are gonna call this function. By the way, we are not using our function directly inside use effect. That's because we are not able to use async function directly here. We are not allowed. Okay. What I'm gonna do is taking today's date. So I will say const today is gonna be new date. And also we are gonna need last month. How we are gonna do this? I'm gonna create new date again, set month. So we are gonna assign new one. To do this, we can use today and we are gonna get its month. And we are gonna write here -1. And also one more. It's gonna be previous month or 2 months ago or whatever you say, and it's gonna be 2. Why we are doing this? That because, as I said, we are gonna need 2 different data. First one will be from today to last month, and second one will be from last month to the previous month. You're gonna understand better right now. By the way, we should make them date also. Let's see actually. I think I made a mistake. I'm gonna open my console. Okay, it's giving timestamp. If I write here new date again, it's gonna give the date version. Okay, perfect. And I will do the same thing for this one. New date. And let's see, it's gonna be January. Okay, perfect. So what I'm gonna do is fetching 2 different data. To do that, we are gonna use Firebase query. Let's see how it's gonna work. I will say const, what can we say, last month query. It's gonna be query from Firebase, and we are gonna use our collections. And we are gonna pass, as we always do, DB and let's say users. And after that, inside this query, we can filter our items. To do that, we are going to use the key that we can filter our documents, and it's going to be where. And here, which property we are going to filter. As you remember, we have timestamp here. We can use this property and we can say just take users which belong to last month, and we can do the same thing for the previous month. So what I'm gonna do, I'll say timestamp inside code, of course, timestamp, and I'm gonna write my condition here, and it's gonna be smaller than today. And also we can use multiple where key here. So I will say again where, again timestamp, but this time it's gonna be greater than last month. So let's say last month. Let me close here. Okay. Let's import them, by the way. It's not coming, I think. Okay. Let's come here and I will say import from Firebase and Firestore. So what we are gonna need? We are gonna need collection, query, and where. And also we are gonna fetch data. It means we are gonna need get document. And also we are gonna need our DB. Remember, it's inside our Firebase file. Import DB from Firebase, like that. Okay, perfect. Collection, why it's yellow? Collections. It's gonna be collection. Okay, so I can do the same thing for the previous month. I will duplicate this. Let's say previous, and this time it's gonna be smaller than last month and bigger than previous one. Okay, our queries are ready. Right now we can fetch our data. Const last month data, and it's gonna be await get documents and last month query. I will do the same thing for other one. Let's say previous, and it's gonna be previous. And by the way, it's gonna be documents. So we have our data. Right now we can compare them. How we are gonna do this? If you remember, we have amount here, but we are using this as a dummy data. Instead, we can create our use effect and we can update our data. I will say const amount, set amount, and it's gonna be use state. And at the beginning, let's say null. And also, for this difference, we are gonna do the same thing. What's this difference? Remember, it's our percentage here. So I'm gonna duplicate this and it's gonna be difference, like that. Let's delete here and we are gonna set our data. Firstly, I will say set amount, and it's gonna be last month data. But remember, we are not interested in any user property. We are gonna just take its length, like that. Oops, I just write twice. Let's delete this. Okay, as you can see, 4. That's because we just created 4 users in this month. But if I change, for example, these 2, it's gonna be, let's say, February. I will update, and this one, let's say January. So in this case, we are not gonna fetch this one because it doesn't belong to the last month or the previous month. So let's see. I will refresh. And as you can see, only 2. And all widgets are same, that because we are just fetching users, but don't worry, we are gonna handle that. So what about this difference? I will say set difference, and I'm gonna write here some math. I will say last month data dot length minus previous one dot length, and I'm gonna cover them, that because they are gonna be divided by, again, previous data and length, and multiply by 100. It's gonna give us our difference. Let's see. Okay, it's not defined. There is something wrong. Of course, I forgot docs. Like that. I hope it's okay right now. And as you can see, 100% more than last month. That because it was 1, but this time it's 2, it means 100%. If I create one more user, let's create. Hello. And username. Why I am uploading this, I don't know, but anyway, I'm sending. Okay, there is a problem that because we forgot add here, I'm gonna send again. Okay, it shows users page again. And as you can see, 200% more than previous month. Perfect, it works. So what about others? For example, this second one, let's create one more collection. I'm gonna say products, for example, auto ID, and let's say title, iPhone 13, maybe price. It's gonna be number, of course, but it's not really important. But anyway, let's do that. I will say status, for example, is gonna be active. Oops, let's update this. Okay. By the way, I forgot timestamp. The most important thing. I'm gonna choose here just today. I'm gonna add, and I want to duplicate this. Oh, I can't do this here. Okay, let's add new one. February 22. So how we are gonna change these queries according to our type? Let's come here, and for example, we can say query, and it's gonna be users. Orders, earnings, maybe let's change this one. I will say products or product. Title will be products. It's not gonna be money, but I'm gonna write here query, and it's gonna be products. That because it's our collection name, remember. And for our queries, I'm gonna update them. Instead of users, it's gonna be our query, data.query. And of course, inside homepage, order, earning, balance, but I'm gonna change this one. I'm gonna take this here, and it's gonna be product. And here, perfect. As you can see, this is our product number, which belonged this month, but our difference is 0%. That because our other product belongs to previous month. It's that easy. What about negative one? Let's create one more quickly. It's gonna be again previous month. That because it's gonna be negative. I'm gonna save. But there's a problem here that because it's still green and we see this icon here, we are gonna change them. And as you remember, our class name is positive, but we are gonna change it and make it dynamic. Let's delete this, and I will say percentage, and also look at difference. If it's smaller than 0, right here negative. And if it's not, just write here positive. And right now, as you can see, it's red. That's because we changed our class name, but we still see this up arrow here. Let's change it also. I will come here and another condition. If difference is smaller than 0, we are gonna use keyboard arrow down icon. Of course, question mark here. And if it's not, if it's positive, it's gonna be keyboard arrow up icon. Like that. Of course, we don't have this icon. Let's import. I'm gonna duplicate this and it's gonna be down. Oops, what's wrong here? I didn't delete this one. I'm gonna delete. And that's all. Positive and negative. And you can create your orders, earnings. I think you have learned enough to handle anything in Firebase. It's really easy. As I said, it's a little bit strange. I agree, MongoDB is much more easier, but if you are using Firebase, you don't have to create your own backend server for smaller projects. Of course, if you are creating something complex, you should definitely create your backends. And also, I'm gonna show you Firebase admin. Oops. Okay, there is a typo again, but doesn't matter. It's like Google search. And there is a Firebase admin SDK. And as you can see, it provides more feature like creating token verification, user roles, refresh token, all those things. And don't worry about that. When we create any big project with Firebase, we are gonna use all those features. But for now, for the basics, it's totally enough. It was pretty all what I want to talk about Firebase. I hope you enjoyed. If you learned something new today, please like the video and just write what projects you want to see in the next videos. And that's all. If you want to support Lama Dev, you can use the link in the description below, or you can join the channel. And don't forget to follow Lama Dev social media accounts. And I hope I will see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.